Hello everyone, good evening, warm welcome to your own session, that is Finance Current Affairs. So today we will be discussing the Finance Current Affairs from 10th to 12th of June, and I assure you today's session is going to be really very important. काफी सारी नई चीजें आज आपको हर बार की तरह सीखने को मिलेंगी. Last session के बाद कुछ comments मुझे मिले, and in those comments the student has asked me कि सर आपके जो notes हैं they are very, or I would say they are in much detail. So can you please highlight what all things are important which we need to remember? So that has been sorted. From today onwards, I will be highlighting the entire content which you need to remember. मैं आपको बता दूं कि मैं ऐसा क्यों करता हूं, कि why I come up with extensive content. उसका reason है so that I can give you the understanding about the particular news. I can give you the past history of that news, the reference of that news, और उस reference में जब मुझे कोई लगे कि कोई ऐसी चीज है जो examiner आपके examination में पूछ सकता है, I also include that. But from today onwards, I will be highlighting all those areas which you need to remember. But मेरा जो content है that will be in an extensive manner only, so that I can give you the in and out of the entire news. ठीक है जी, स्टार्ट करें बिना किसी देरी के आज के सेशन को. और मुझे लगता है कि अब you guys should follow the content the way I'm providing it to you, because in past 12 years I have helped many students to clear many different exams, and from past 6 years I have been training the students specifically for RBI. So don't worry, the content which I'm providing you, the way I'm providing it to you, it is appropriate, it is apt, and it will help you to clear your examination. ठीक है जी, स्टार्ट करें बिना किसी देरी के. तो आज हम पहली न्यूज से स्टार्ट करेंगे, लेकिन बिफोर आई स्टार्ट विद द फर्स्ट न्यूज, बिल्कुल आरबीआई इस पर्टिकुलर सेशन में आई कवर ऑल द आरबीआई नोटिफिकेशंस, आरबीआई प्रेस रिलीज, इवन द मास्टर डायरेक्शंस, एवरीथिंग इज कवर्ड, डोंट वरी. ठीक है जी, सबसे पहला पॉइंट, अगर आप चाहते हैं इस पर्टिकुलर पीडीएफ को डाउनलोड करना तो ये मेरे टेलीग्राम चैनल पर मिल जाएगी, आप इसे डाउनलोड कर लीजिएगा. और जब आप पीडीएफ को डाउनलोड करेंगे यू विल फाइंड द क्वेश्चंस बेस्ड ऑन द सेम न्यूज. जो न्यूज हम आज कवर करेंगे उसके बेसिस पे 5 या 7 क्वेश्चंस भी आपको मिलेंगे फॉर प्रैक्टिस. उसके आंसर्स आप कमेंट सेक्शन में शेयर कीजिएगा, एंड आई विल बी शेयरिंग द फाइनल आंसर विद यू. लास्ट सेशन में भी, लास्ट वीडियो में भी, लास्ट सेशन में भी आई हैव शेयर्ड विद यू I guess 7 or 10 questions, but I haven't received much reply. That is the reason I have not replied the correct answer. So आज और कल 2-3 दिन और मैं टेस्ट करूंगा. If I won't get at least 20 comments as answer to the questions which I will be adding in the PDF, then I will discontinue adding them. ठीक है जी? So you must give in your effort by commenting in the comment section the correct answers from the PDF which you are going to download from this particular telegram channel. पहली न्यूज बहुत ही बेसिक न्यूज है, लेकिन इस बेसिक न्यूज को मैंने बहुत ही 360 डिग्री फॉर्मेट पर कवर किया है. आई एम प्रीटी श्योर यू आर गोइंग टू एंजॉय दिस. ध्यान से सुनना. सबसे पहला पॉइंट, स्टेट बैंक ऑफ इंडिया हैज पेड 8,076 crore rupees as dividend to government of India. We know that recently there was a news when RBI has paid 2.69 lakh crore rupees to the government. Why this surplus was transferred by RBI to the government? So the reason is very obvious, that RBI is government owned organization, and obviously government is responsible to own the profit of RBI, because RBI is owned by government of India. So in a similar manner, SBI is a scheduled commercial bank which is primarily operating to earn profit, and out of the State Bank of India's profit, certain profit amount is transferred to Government of India. What is the difference? So in case of RBI, Government of India is the 100% owner of RBI, but in case of SBI, government is the owner of SBI up to 57.43% shares. So that means out of the total profit which SBI has decided to be distributed to its shareholders, which we call it as dividend, out of the entire dividend 57.43% dividend is transferred to the government of India, and the value of this particular dividend is what, sir? It is 8,076 crore rupees. अब यहाँ पर I have 2-3 questions in my mind. The first question I have in my mind is, in case of RBI, so when you were teaching us RBI, in case of RBI profit distribution, we discussed about a term, if you remember, economic capital framework. And this economic capital framework has defined that out of the RBI's profit, what value should be subtracted to maintain the reserves, as well as value should be subtracted for making the operational expenditure, and the left out amount, the surplus amount, is ought to be transferred to the government of India. So this entire discussion for RBI was done under the economic capital framework. Now in case of SBI, my first question is, unlike RBI, SBI will transfer its net profit to its shareholders. What will be the answer? My answer is no, sir. SBI will also not transfer its net profit, 100% of the net profit, to its shareholder, because out of this net profit, SBI will also maintain certain reserves in order to counter a number of issues, and these fund reserves which are maintained by SBI will be utilized for future operations. Out of the net profit, the amount which is not distributed to the shareholder, we call it as retained dividend. We call it as what? So we call it as retained dividend. So all these things we will be discussing. Secondly, we will be discussing, so what are the methods or what are the criteria taken into consideration by SBI before initiating the process of dividend distribution. What are the conditions which a bank, not only SBI, which a bank needs to fulfill in order to distribute the dividend? If you don't know what is dividend, then I'll tell you. Dividend is basically total revenue minus cost of goods sold for a company. Out of this, we obtain a term, we call it as gross profit. From gross profit, we subtract the operational expense, then we receive earning before interest, taxes, amortization, depreciation, then we subtract interest, we subtract depreciation, we subtract amortization, we receive earning before tax, then we subtract the tax value, then we receive earning after tax, and out of this earning after tax, the amount which is distributed, which is shared with the shareholders, is known as dividend. There is one more point which we call it as dividend payout ratio. There is one more point which is known as dividend payout ratio. Now, what is the meaning of dividend payout ratio, guys? Let's say the total earning after tax is I'm just taking example, this is 100 crores. This is 100 crores, and the number of shares which have been issued by the company, for example, in our case, this is SBI. So let's say the number of shares which are issued in the market is 1 crore. So what is going to be dividend per share? So dividend, or I would say earning per share, is what? So earning per share is 100 crore rupees divided by 1 crore shares. So 1 share is earning a value of 100 rupees. Now out of this 100 rupees, what amount you are sharing, what amount you are paying, that is known as dividend payout ratio, which means if the dividend payout ratio is 40%, that means out of the earning per share, you are not sharing 100 rupees entirely to the shareholder, you are just paying 40%. That means 40 rupees will be paid to the shareholder, and this 60 rupees will be maintained as retained dividend. समझ आ गई बात? सारी स्टोरी क्लियर हो गई? Just tell me yes sir if the entire story is clear. Now let's read out the news. What does this news say? So the news says State Bank of India has paid 8,000 crore rupees to Government of India as dividend for the financial year 2024-25. The dividend check was presented to Union Minister Nirmala Sitharamanji. Who is she? She is the Minister of Finance, by the SBI Chairman. The SBI Chairman is CS Sethi in New Delhi. Remember that SBI has declared, please pay attention. Remember that SBI has declared a dividend of 15.90. Dividend is 15.90 per share for the financial year 2024-25, which was last year 13.70 rupees per share, when the dividend paid to the government was around 7,000 crores. So from 7,000 crores, the dividend has increased almost by 1,000 crore in comparison to the previous financial year, and per share dividend payment has increased by 2 rupees. If I talk about the Government of India's shareholding in SBI, so Government of India shareholding in SBI is 57.43%. SBI has reported, please pay attention, SBI has reported a record net profit of 70,000 crores for the financial year 2024-25, but what amount is paid to the government? That is 8,000 crores. I agree that government is not the 100% owner, but government is more than 50% owner of this bank, which means 50% of the net profit is around 35,000 crores. So rather than paying 35,000, they have shared only 8,000 crore. That means 100% of the net profit is not distributed to the shareholder as dividend. Last year, profit of this same bank was 61,000 crore rupees. If I talk about the net interest income, I hope you remember what is net interest income in case of a bank. Bank accept deposits, bank provide loan. So difference between the average deposit rate of interest and average lending rate. So difference between average lending rate and average deposit rate of interest is known as net interest margin. And if I calculate the average lending received, average rate of interest paid, for example, it is 10 lakh rupees, received is 7 lakhs. So in absolute value, what interest income bank has received? That is 3 lakhs. So this is net interest income. In terms of percentage, it is termed as net interest margin. So as per the given data, net interest income for the quarter has increased to 42,000 crore rupees, making a 2.7% increase, while the net margin is around 3%. So I don't want that you should remember this data. Rest entire data written on the screen is important, but I would like you, or I would request you to remember SBI's net interest margin is around 3%. ठीक है जी, कहानी समझ आ गई। अब पहला पॉइंट, अब यहाँ पे हम दो चीजें हैं जो बहुत डिटेल में डिस्कस करेंगे। सबसे पहली चीज तो ये कि सर डिविडेंड डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन पॉलिसी क्या है, व्हाट इज द एक्चुअल डिविडेंड डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन पॉलिसी, जिसके बेसिस पर एसबीआई अपने डिविडेंड को, अपने नेट प्रॉफिट को शेयर करता है विद इट्स शेयर होल्डर्स। विल डिस्कस दैट। सेकेंडली, विल डिस्कस व्हाट इज द profit scenario of the entire banking system. Specifically, I'll focus on government sector bank and private banks, and specifically we'll focus on the government owned scheduled commercial banks, that is the 12 scheduled commercial banks which we have. We will be talking about them as well, which we call it as public sector banks. ठीक है जी, ready? So let's move on to the second phase of this particular news. The second phase of this particular news talks about the dividend distribution policy. Don't remember anything. Don't panic. I'll mark all the points which you need to remember. So, dividend distribution policy. So, dividend distribution policy is framed as per the Regulation 43 of Security and Exchange Board of India, Regulation 2015. So, company basically comes up regarding its dividend distribution policy as per the SEBI rules and regulations. For a bank which we are focusing on, what are the policy guidelines? The first policy guideline is a bank will be eligible to pay dividend. A bank will be eligible to pay dividend only after fulfilling the Basel III capital requirements, only after fulfilling the Basel III capital requirements and many other conditions. But on the all over scenario, I would say the central board, it shall take into account the interest of all stakeholders and following aspects while deciding on the proposal of declaring the dividend. So dividend is decided on the basis of what is interim dividend paid, that what actually the dividend you have paid before calculation was done. What is the scenario of the annual financial statement, auditor qualifications, Basel III capital requirements, bank long-term growth plans are also taken into consideration, and rate of dividend shall be determined by the central board. So the first point is on what criteria. Nothing to remember, just have a understanding. If you are a bank decide its dividend distribution on the basis of board approved policy, and board take into consideration different aspects. So these are the aspects which are need to be taken into consideration by the board. But this is a bank, and if it is a bank, then there would be an intervention of RBI. So because of the intervention of RBI, it says that a bank is eligible to declare the dividend. A bank is eligible to declare the dividend not only on the basis of these aspects, but also the financial parameters. What are the financial parameters? A bank is allowed to issue dividend or announce dividend only if bank has fulfilled its capital adequacy ratio requirements. So what are the bank's capital adequacy ratio requirements, or what is capital to risk weighted asset ratio? So in case of Basel norm 3, it says that capital adequacy ratio should be 9%. Basel says it is 8%, but RBI says it should be 9%. So capital adequacy ratio should be 9%, and mandatory capital conservation buffer is required to be 2.5%, which means capital to risk weighted asset ratio should be 11.5%. If bank has 11.5% ratio of capital to risk weighted asset ratio, then only bank is allowed to, then this is the first condition which bank should fulfill. If bank fulfill this condition, then only bank is eligible to distribute the dividend. The moment I write 11.5%, things change. The moment I write 11.5%, things change, because sir यहाँ पे तो लिखा है 12.1, यहाँ पे तो लिखा है कि अब रिवाइज कर दिया और रिवाइज करके it will be 11.3%. सर ये क्या हुआ? What is this? What are you talking about? What has happened? Then my answer to this particular question is, sir, this is in general, whatsoever you have written, this is the criteria which is need to be fulfilled in general. But if I talk about SBI, and why I'm focusing on SBI this time? Sir, I'm focusing on SBI this time because SBI falls under the category of DSIB. Give me the full form. What is DSIB? Domestic systematically important bank. In India, we have 3 banks in this particular category as per current financial year. One is SBI, other one is ICICI, and the third one is HDFC. Now, according to RBI says that capital to risk weighted asset ratio for all the banks is 9%, which is actually 8% by Basel, and 9% according to RBI. So 9% plus 2.5% for capital conservation buffer. But we are talking about what? So we are talking about domestic systematically important bank. Domestic systematically important banks, they are required to maintain extra capital, and that is, or that was 0.6%, which has now increased to 0.8%. So if I add 0.6, earlier criteria was 12.1%, but now this 0.6 has been revised and it has now increased to 0.8 for the given financial year we are talking, that is 2025-26. from 2025-26, this DSIB reserves or capital requirement is 0.8% as it is mentioned. So from 1st of April 2025, it will be maintained as 0.8%, according to which domestic systematically important bank should hold capital to risk weighted asset ratio of value at least 12.3%. पता था किसी को ये? Have you ever learned this point? And don't you think this point has a potential that it can be asked in the examination? It has a potential that it can be asked in the examination. Say yes or no. फिर आप कहते हो कि सर आप इतना एक्स्ट्रा क्यों पढ़ाते हो, आप इतना ज्यादा एक्स्ट्रा कंटेंट क्यों देते हो? Don't you think this has the capability that it can be asked in the examination? जब ऐसे क्वेश्चन एग्जाम में आते हैं तो यही सुनने को मिलता है, एग्जामिनेशन बहुत टफ था। हम ये भूल जाते हैं कि शायद हमने उतने डिटेल में जाके चीजों को पढ़ा ही नहीं था। ठीक है जी, क्लियर है। मूविंग ऑन टू द नेक्स्ट पॉइंट। द नेक्स्ट पॉइंट इज, इफ यू आर अ बैंक यू कैन अनाउंस डिविडेंड ओनली इफ बैंक्स नेट एनपीए इज लेस देन 6%। अगर बैंक का नेट एनपीए अगर बैंक का नेट एनपीए 6% से ज्यादा है, बैंक विल नॉट अलाउड टू अनाउंस डिविडेंड। इफ बैंक्स CRAR is not up to 12.3% or 12.1%, then also the bank is not allowed to announce dividend. If bank's leverage ratio is not 4%, again this is what domestic systematically important bank. In general banks it is 3.5%. So if it is not 4%, then also you are not allowed to announce the dividend. ठीक है जी, क्लियर हो गया पॉइंट, समझ आया? Now there are certain regulatory requirements. If you fulfill these requirements, then only you are allowed to announce the dividend. Those are not important, you can leave them. It is just for your reference I have given, but this part very important, you have to remember this. Moving on to the next point. The next point says, again a very important point, according to Government of India, according to RBI, RBI comes up with this norm. What is the norm? Maximum possible dividend payout is 40%. So RBI says the maximum dividend payout ratio is 40%, and rest 60% of the dividend value, or rest 60% of your dividend value will be retained dividend. Rest will be retained dividend. Now you must be wondering कि सर अगर मैं एक शेयर होल्डर हूं, is it beneficial for me if there is a retained dividend? I'll let you know. Please pay attention. Guys, let's suppose company's net profit this year is 100 crores. ठीक है जी, out of 100 crore, company has issued dividend of 20 crores. This is distributed dividend, and rest is retained dividend, that is 80 crores. Ab technically, if I am a shareholder of this company, let's say I am a shareholder of 10% of this company, I was expecting a dividend of 10 crores. But because of dividend distribution which has done, total dividend distribution is 20%. My share out of 20% will be 10%. My share out of 20% will be 10%, that is 2 crores. तो भैया मेरे वो 8 करोड़ कहाँ गए जो मेरी कंपनी ने कमाए लेकिन मुझे मिले ही नहीं? The result is this 80 crore is going to be invested in the company. The moment this 80 crore is reinvested in the company, this will result in increase in company's asset value. This will result in increase in company's equity value. Why it results in increase in equity value? Because this is profit or this is reserve, and reserves are the part of equity. So in that particular case, my shareholding in a company which is of 10%, it has increased by 8 crores. Why? Because companies retained reserves or companies retained profit, companies equity value, companies capital value has increased by 80 crores. समझ आई ये बात? तो मुझे कोई नुकसान नहीं हुआ, टेक्निकली मुझे कोई नुकसान नहीं हुआ, जो पैसा मुझे मिलना था ना मिलकर मेरी जो शेयर होल्डिंग है, मेरी जो वैल्यूएशन है कंपनी की वो बढ़ गई। और अगर मेरी कंपनी की वैल्यूएशन बढ़ी, कंपनी की एसेट बढ़ी, कंपनी की इक्विटी वैल्यू बढ़ी, दैट मींस माय शेयर होल्डिंग इंक्रीज, तो मेरे लिए इट्स ओके। फॉर मी इट्स ओके। फॉर एग्जांपल, अर्लियर द कंपनीज equity value was 1000 crores, now it has increased to 1080 crore. I am a 10% shareholder, earlier I was owner of 100 crores, now I am owner of 108 crores. तो नुकसान नहीं हुआ, just rather than getting the profit, the valuation or the shareholding value has increased. That is a point. Coming back to the point, so according to RBI, the dividend payout ratio maximum allowed is 40%. So what does it mean? It means that what dividend can be distributed, so maximum dividend distribution or dividend payout is 40%. If net NPA is zero, and bank's CRAR is greater than 100%, then dividend is going to be 40%. If net NPA is 0 to 3%, it will be up to 35%, or it will be 25 or 15%. So why I have come up with this particular distribution? I have come up with this particular distribution to give you one point which you need to remember. According to RBI, maximum permissible dividend payout is 40%, and this is maximum. It will change on the basis of CRAR. It will change on the basis of last 3 years CRAR as well as net NPA. Last 3 years CRAR as well as net NPA. This data, this is not important. Don't sit and start memorizing it, but you must understand the logic, how bank decide what dividend is need to be distributed. RBI says maximum dividend payout ratio is 40%, and that 40% is the maximum value. It will decrease depending upon net NPA as well as CRAR. Now RBI आ गया, अब आ गया अगला point, that is government. So according to Ministry of Finance, Government of India, a letter was introduced in January 2013 which has directed the bank to pay minimum dividend of 20% of their paid up capital or 20% of their post tax profits. So क्या लिखा है? So directed to pay minimum dividend of 20% of the paid up capital. भैया या तो आप अपने 20% of paid up capital को एज अ डिविडेंड पे करो, या फिर जो आपका अर्निंग आफ्टर टैक्स है उसका 20% यू शुड पे एज डिविडेंड. सो दिस इज द कंडीशन which has been introduced by government. और ये क्या है? This is minimum. Government says minimum 20% of earning after tax, and RBI says maximum dividend payout ratio. Maximum dividend payout ratio is 40%. अगर किसी को अभी भी डाउट है what is dividend payout ratio, so please pay attention. Dividend payout ratio shall be calculated as the percentage of dividend payable in a year to net profit during the year. So कितना पैसा आपको net profit है जो आप पे कर सकते थे, और उसमें से आप कितना पैसा पे कर रहे हैं, that is so dividend payable in a year which you are paying this time out of the net profit. तो अगर आपका net profit 100 है per shareholder and you are paying only 40, so your dividend payout ratio is 40%. That is what I was trying to discuss. But over here what I am trying to discuss कि भैया गवर्नमेंट क्या कहती है कि minimum dividend payout कितना होगा by the banks, so that is minimum 20% of the net or net 20% of the net profit. ठीक है जी. फिर जो मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ फाइनेंस है, गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया, इट हैज गिवन वन मोर लेटर in 2021 where they have clarified that the minimum dividend is subject to regulatory guidelines which are issued by RBI, and therefore specific prior permission shall sought only if the dividend proposed to be paid is less than the minimum required under Government of India guidelines as well as permissible under a regulatory guidelines. तो ये क्या आया सर? इसमें एक चीज और बोलती, ये जो आपने लिखा ना 20%, ये मिनिमम पे आउट कब है सर? व्हेन यू फुलफिल ऑल द प्रायर कंडीशंस, व्हेन यू फुलफिल द फाइनेंशियल पैरामीटर्स, व्हेन यू फुलफिल द रेगुलेटरी प्रोविजंस, देन ओनली यू आर एलिजिबल to process the dividend, and in that case minimum is 20% according to government, maximum is 40% according to RBI. ठीक है जी, clear हो गया point, समझ आ गया. So on that particular basis the decision has been taken, and this year SBI has distributed 8,000 crore rupees out of a net profit of 70,000 crore rupees. समझ आ गई बात? If it is clear, give me yes sir, so that I can move on. Now I will be moving on to the next point, and the next point is again very interesting. The next point basically talks about the Indian commercial banks, and obviously I am focusing on the two types of banks. One is your private banks and the other one is government owned banks. Please pay attention. Indian banking sector has recorded highest profit or record breaking profit in the financial year 2024-25, with industry earning rising 14 times over the decade. So 14 times the net profit of entire banking sector, that is the private and the public sector bank, has increased to 3.71 lakh crore rupees. 3.71 lakh crore rupees, driven by lending income, treasury gains, as well as reduced provisions for the NPAs. So government owned banks, they have demonstrated 20% increase. So government owned banks, they have witnessed a 20% increase in their net profits, and it has increased to 1.83 lakh crore rupees. And in case of private banks, it has been recorded 7% increase with a value 1.87 lakh crore rupees. ठीक है जी? Out of the Indian banking sector, highest profit has been earned by State Bank of India, 70,000 crore rupees, HDFC Bank 67,000, and ICICI Bank 47,000 crore rupees. The earnings of the private sector bank has been negatively hit. The earnings of the private sector bank has been negatively hit because of IndusInd Bank and IDFC First Bank. So these are the two private banks which have not performed well, जिनकी वजह से प्राइवेट बैंक्स का जो नेट प्रॉफिट है या कंसोलिडेटेड प्रॉफिट है, दैट हैज रिड्यूस्ड, अदरवाइज इट वुड हैव बीन प्रीटी हाई. अब इसमें कुछ रिमार्केबल परफॉर्मेंसेस है, और इस बार की जो रिमार्केबल परफॉर्मेंस है इन टर्म्स ऑफ इंडियन बैंक प्रॉफिट रिकॉर्ड, ये क्यों इतना ज्यादा अच्छा है? द रीजन इज improved asset quality. As since 2015 on RBI norms, banks, they are reviewing their asset quality, and because of the review of asset quality, where banks identify the loans which have been turned into NPA or the NPAs which have been turned into loss asset, and bank present their data openly to the public, this asset quality review framework which has been introduced by RBI undoubtedly in 2016, in 2017, in 2018 has resulted in huge increase in the NPA values of the bank. But this continuous practice has increased surveillance on the banks, because of which banks, they have slowly improved their asset quality. And yes, now the asset quality has improved. That is one of the reason of recording highest profit in last, or highest profit, or the profit has increased to 14 times in comparison to the last decade data. Then there is a steady credit growth increase. That means credit is growing, or credit growth rate is steady. There is a disciplined financial management because of n number of RBI and SEBI norms. NPA has fallen down to a decade low, that is only 2.4% as of March 2025. So gross NPA, it has fallen down to just 2.4%. अगर NPA कम होगी तो obviously बैंक को reserves provisioning कम करनी होगी, reserves कम रखने होंगे. Bank's profit will be utilized for earning rather than for reserving, which has increased the profits of the bank. Along with this, banks have total recovered 3.9 lakh crore rupees under the insolvency and bankruptcy code. So those loans which turned into NPA, which turned into bad asset, now they have been recovered with the help of insolvency and bankruptcy code, and total recovery is of 3.9 lakh crore rupees. Undoubtedly, it has given extra liquidity to the banking sector, which pushed the profits of the banking sector further. Last but not the least is, especially in case of government owned banks, government has infused capital. What is capital infusion? We also call it as recapitalization. It basically means when the owner of a company invest capital in a company in order to revive the company out of losses, in order to avoid that the company could be declared as insolvent or bank run. That kind of investment is known as capital infusion or recapitalization. So government has infused capital of value 3.15 lakh crore rupees in the government owned banks since 2015, and this capital infusion has again given a push to the banking sector. Now if I specifically talk about government owned banks, एक बार ऊपर देखो, change हो गया, the title has changed for the slide. So government owned bank, as we have studied that for the government owned banks, the profits they have increased by 26% on year basis. SBI alone has contributed 40% of the total public sector banks profits. Highest percentage increase in terms of profit is recorded by PNB, which has witnessed a profit increase of 102% on year basis. And if I talk about the turnaround, so turnaround in the financial year 2018 was public sector banks, they were in loss, and loss was around 85,000 crores, and today we are sitting at a profit of more than 1.7 lakh crore rupees. So today the profit is 1.7 lakh crore rupees, which is recorded by these public sector banks. This is something which is very important. Along with this, there are a few more reasons specifically related to the public sector banks which has led to the increase in profits of the public sector bank, and government banks or public sector banks, they have posted record breaking cumulative profit in the financial year 2024-25. All the 12 public sector banks, out of which 11 are nationalized bank, one is SBI. So all the 12 public sector banks, they have reported positive growth. They have reported positive growth in terms of their profit. So here, what are the reasons? So the reason is reform. We call it as 4R reform. Recognize the NPA, resolution and recovery, recapitalization of public sector banks, and reforms in the governance and financial ecosystem. So these 4R strategy has supported the public sector banks, because of which the public sector banks, they are not only out of losses, rather they have recorded their highest profit in the past of value more than 1.7 lakh crore rupees. Along with this, bank amalgamation, bank merger, it has also pushed, or it has also given a positive hit to this to the banking sector, especially to the government owned banks. Adoption of digital banking, which has resulted in decrease in expenditure or decrease in cost of services which are provided to the customer. Agar sare customer branch mein aaye, or in comparison to that, now the customer is sitting at home and using the banking services through digital banking, that is more cost effective. Cost kam ho gayi to profits badhenge. Improved lending discipline, where bank is using a number of rules and regulations before providing the loan. Credit rating agencies are looked upon, credit score is looked upon, and many other things. Along with that, enhanced governance are the other reforms which has pushed, or which has provided a positive takeoff for the public sector banks, which have recorded profit, and all the 12 public sector banks, they have recorded a positive growth in their profit values. क्लियर हुआ? न्यूज़ बड़ी छोटी थी, बड़ी सिंपल थी. अगर मैं चाहता तो इस न्यूज़ को 5 मिनट में करवा के निकल जाता, क्योंकि न्यूज़ इतनी ही थी बस. बट इस न्यूज़ को देखकर मेरे दिमाग में दो चीजें आई. पहला, आरबीआई डिसाइड करता अपना डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ डिविडेंड, तो बैंक्स भी करते होंगे, और बैंक्स के डिसीजन में गवर्नमेंट भी इन्वॉल्व होगा, आरबीआई भी इन्वॉल्व होगा. उनका क्या रोल है? तो मैंने आपको ये सारा रोल दिखा दिया. गवर्नमेंट का क्या रोल, आरबीआई का क्या रोल, कैसे डिस्ट्रीब्यूट होगा, क्या कंडीशंस हैं जिसके बेसिस पे डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन होगा, मैंने वो बता दिया. फिर डोमेस्टिक सिस्टमैटिकली इंपॉर्टेंट बैंक्स कैसे अलग है विद रिस्पेक्ट टू दी जनरल कमर्शियल बैंक्स, तो वो भी मैंने आपको दिखा दिया. इस वैल्यू का चेंज हुआ फ्रॉम दिस फाइनेंशियल ईयर, दैट इज अ पार्ट ऑफ करंट अफेयर्स. I have added that as well for you, which has given, which shows that yes, it is a potential slide जहां से कोई ना कोई क्वेश्चन एग्जामिनेशन में जरूर पूछा जाएगा. जैसे मैं कंप्लीट कर रहा था इसे, तो मेरे दिमाग में आया कि एसबीआई का तो पढ़ लिया, व्हाट अबाउट अदर बैंक्स. फिर मेरे दिमाग में आया प्राइवेट बैंक्स या गवर्नमेंट बैंक्स. सो आई हैव कंप्लीटेड द एंटायर डिस्कशन फॉर प्राइवेट एज वेल एज गवर्नमेंट बैंक्स. समझ आई बात? क्लियर हो गया? If it is clear, just give me yes sir, so that I can move on to the next steps. If it is clear, just give me yes sir, so that I can move on to the next news. Any doubt? You may ask please. Prachi jaldi aayega. I'll be coming up with the left out 3 sessions on annual report. I'll inform you once I will be conducting them. Most probably kal, varna in the upcoming week I'll complete it. क्लियर हो गई सारी स्टोरी? समझ आ गया? कोई डाउट आएगा तो आई एम प्रीटी श्योर अब इस पॉइंट पे, इस न्यूज से रिलेटेड कोई भी क्वेश्चन आपसे पूछा जाए, you will be in a position to answer it for sure. Recently, there has been a news that a report has been presented, and this report has been presented by the authority, by the organization known as VV Giri National Labour Institute. This VV Giri National Labour Institute, it is based in Noida, UP, and it is affiliated by Ministry of Labour and Employment. This particular institute has released a new study which has projected that the gig workforce, I hope you understand what is gig workforce or what is platform workforce. No, I'll let you know. For example, Zomato, for example, Rapido, for example, Ola, these are the platforms, and on these platforms the workers, they tie up in order to be a part of this particular platform as a delivery partner, or maybe as a cab partner, maybe as a ride partner. So all those employees, or all those, I would say, workers who are linked to these platforms, they are known as platform workers. And if I say gig worker is basically a worker or a term given to an individual who is engaged in short-term flexible job, often independent contractors or freelancers working on a project or task basis rather than through a traditional employment. So there is no traditional employment, there is no regular payment. It is just, if you want a task to be done, you complete that task and you get the funds for that particular task. That is known as gig worker. And same the workers associated with the platforms as a gig workers, they are also known as platform workforce. It is expected to grow to a value approximately 62 million by 2047. It will increase to 62 million by 2047, nearly 15% of total non-agriculture workforce. What is the reason? What is the reason? So the reason on this particular point is gig worker or platform worker count is increasing because of, first, economic situation where effective and efficiency is the topmost priority, and every company wants to I would say cut down its regular cost, and they are ready to pay against the services they are using. So that is the reason it is pushing the gig workers, it is pushing the platform workers, and we are expecting that out of the total non-agriculture workforce, 15% workers will be gig workers. The new study which has been done, it has estimated this projection for 2047 on the basis of 2022 Niti Aayog report on gig worker. So what they have done, Niti Aayog ने जो report दी थी gig workers की 2022, उस report पर this institute has applied exponential smoothing error, trend and seasonality model to make the projection. So they have just made the projection. This says that we are expecting that the gig workforce will be double in next 17 years. According to them, the gig workforce will double in next 17 years. The next point is, initially ride sharing, as I said, ride sharing, food delivery were the main areas of gig industry, but now the things have changed. It has linked. Now we have the gig workers in the healthcare sector, in the education sector, in the creative services like marketing sector, professional consulting like CA and all. So in these all sectors also we have gig workers. How gig workers in a consulting firms? For example, I am a CA. I have tied up with n number of firms. So if a firm gets a customer who wants to get recommendation and who wants to get suggestion how to manage their funds in order to avoid taxes. So out of n number of CAs who are linked with this firm, one of the CAs me. So this customer will link with me and I'll explain all the requirements. I'll complete the service. The customer will pay to the firm. Firm will pay me for that particular meeting, for that particular service. That is what I'm trying to say. Most of the, I would say, you must have seen the websites where you can book appointment, online appointment of your doctor, and the doctor will be connecting with you on the online platform only. So that is, again, in that particular case, doctor is a gig worker for that particular online platform. So that is what I'm trying to discuss in this scenario. So as per Niti Aayog, more than 3 million workers were employed by nearly 11 platform companies in 2020, and this is estimated to increase to 23 million by 2030, including 7% of the total non-agriculture workforce. According to Niti Aayog, 3 million workers were employed by nearly 11 Indian platform companies in 2020. This count is going to double. This count is going to become 8 times to 23 million by 2030, and 23 million will be 7% of the total non-agriculture workforce of the India. So according to this particular organization, it has also highlighted the gig workforce may grow only to 32.5 million instead of 62 million by 2047. It also says that it may only grow not only to 62, but it can also grow maybe up to 32.5 million due to various economic factors such as technological disruptions or advancements, regulatory or policy changes, or maybe economic shocks. But if everything remains same, if everything remains stable, then we are expecting that the gig worker count will increase to 62 million. This has increased, or this has increased the pressure on the government, that now government should come in the picture and government should legalize these gig workers. Government should introduce the rights of the gig workers, the legal rights of the gig workers, which include bargaining and unionization, as this will help in understanding. This will help the gig workers to understand the algos which are used by the platforms through which task is assigned to them, as well as on the basis of which the pay is paid to them. So here it says that there is an emphasis which has need to be done, that government should come in the picture. Government कुछ rules and regulations बनाए, उन rules and regulations के तहत gig workers को भी कुछ powers दी जाए, so that they can question the platform ki on what basis you are assigning the task, on what basis you are making the payment, so that they know how the calculation is done. So the study gave examples of various countries like UK, Canada, Spain, Netherlands, where the gig workers, they are legally recognized for that particular purpose. This report is also urging in front of the government that the legal recognition of the gig workers is very much required. Got it, guys? Clear? Moving on to the next news. Now the next news we have is that is RBI has granted schedule bank status to Vishweshwar Sehkari Bank Limited. So this Vishweshwar Sehkari Bank Limited is an urban cooperative bank, and this urban cooperative bank has been given the title of schedule bank. What is a schedule bank? So schedule bank is a bank which is mentioned under second schedule of RBI Act 1934. In case a bank to be termed as schedule bank, that is possible if the bank has a minimum paid up capital or minimum reserves of 5 lakh rupees. Second is, bank should be registered as a company or a corporate or maybe a cooperative society, but not as a firm. So if there is a firm, that firm will never be included as a schedule bank, or as a schedule will not be included in the schedule bank category. It must hold a categorization of either a company or a corporate or a cooperative society. Last is second schedule, minimum capital criteria in terms of company recognition or cooperative society recognition. Along with this, bank should fulfill the norms of RBI If these three conditions are fulfilled, then only the bank or the financial institute will be given a title of scheduled bank. Once you receive the title of scheduled bank, you will be eligible to enjoy debt or loan services from RBI, so that you can borrow the funds from RBI against repo rate or MSF or maybe bank rate. RBI will even give you suggestions, RBI will even give you advice, RBI will act as your last resort whenever bank is in tough scenarios. So this is how scheduled banks are, I would say, on a benefit. Scheduled banks are on the benefit side in comparison to the non-scheduled banks. So after this declaration, Vishweshwar Sehkari Bank has become the 50th cooperative bank of India and third scheduled cooperative bank or third scheduled urban cooperative bank from Pune. What is a scheduled bank, sir? In India, we have two types of scheduled banks. One is scheduled commercial bank, like we have public sector banks, government owned banks, private banks, foreign banks, RRBs, and then we have scheduled cooperative banks. To become a scheduled bank, minimum paid up capital requirement is 5 lakh rupees. Scheduled bank becomes eligible for debt and loans at bank rate from RBI, and it gets the membership in the clearing house so that the scheduled bank can become the part of payment and settlement system of the country. As you know, NBFCs, they are not the members of clearing houses, and that is the reason the NBFCs, they are not allowed, they don't have the power to issue. They are not allowed, they don't have the power to accept demand deposit, because they cannot issue debit card or checkbooks against those demand deposits, because they are not the part of payment and settlement system. But scheduled banks are the part of same. Moving to the next. What are the criterias for an urban cooperative bank to be included as a scheduled cooperative bank? So in order to be termed as a scheduled cooperative bank, the 4 conditions are need to be fulfilled. First is scheduled primary urban cooperative bank must maintain average daily balance, that is at least 5% of its NDTL. 5% of its NDTL. Scheduled primary urban cooperative bank must maintain an average daily balance that should not be less than 5% of their net demand time liability with RBI. This is the first condition. Second condition is urban cooperative banks are required to maintain statutory liquidity ratio, that is, you can maintain it in the form of cash, gold, or maybe government securities, and the minimum value is 25% of NDTL. Third condition is, which is recently introduced since 2004, urban cooperative banks, they are required to maintain capital to risk weighted asset ratio of at least 3% higher than the minimum requirement for their tier to enhance capital strength and resilience to risk. So for tier 2 to tier 4 urban cooperative banks, this is the condition, but for tier 1 the condition is still the same, that is 9%, which means tier 2 to tier 4 banks, they should hold capital to risk weighted asset ratio of 12%, but tier 1 is okay with 9%. Fourth condition is to be included in the schedule 2nd of RBI Act 1934, urban cooperative banks are required to ensure no major issues are flagged by RBI in terms of regulation or supervision in the past. So if these 4 conditions are fulfilled, then only an urban cooperative bank is included under the category of scheduled bank, and it will be termed as scheduled urban cooperative bank. I hope you all know this. The framework which says tier 1 urban cooperative banks include all the urban cooperative banks with deposits up to 100 crores, and all the salary earner urban cooperative banks. Salary earners urban cooperative bank basically means a cooperative bank which is started by the salary earners. But if public deposit is greater than 100 and up to 1000 crores, tier 2, greater than 1000 and up to 10,000 crores, tier 3, and greater than 10,000 crores, then it will be termed as tier 4. For them, CRAR should be 9%, whatever is set for the other banks. plus 3%, and right now it is 9 plus 3, so it is 12%. But for tier 1 it is 9% allowed because it's a small bank, so if it is maintaining 9%, it's okay. The deposit referred to above shall be audited as of last 31st March if the urban cooperative bank transit to the higher tier. If from tier 2 bank transit to tier 3, in that particular case bank will be given maximum 3 years to complete the requirement. So if there is a change in requirement from tier 2 to tier 3 of any condition, in order to fulfill those conditions, bank will be given a time period of 3 years. Is this point clear? Is this point clear? If it is clear, just give me yes sir. अब अर्बन कोऑपरेटिव बैंक से रिलेटेड मेरे पास एक और न्यूज़ है which I would like to discuss with you, but first tell me, is it clear whatever we have discussed? Is it clear? Shall I move ahead? No doubt till this point? ठीक है. Now pay attention on the screen. Now, guys, do you remember that for a bank, before the bank start providing a loan, bank maintains certain reserves. So these are liquidity reserve ratio, which include CRR, it includes SLR. We have discussed this part in the past many times. Along with that, for a bank, we have discussed a term that is known as ANBC, adjusted net bank credit. Adjusted net bank credit is basically the bank credit except the loan which has been, or the bills which have been rediscounted from RBI or any other organizations. Now whenever we talk about a bank, every bank is liable to provide the loan after maintaining the reserves. Then bank will be providing the loan. And if I talk about the loan, so lending done by the bank is further categorized into two categories. One, we call it as priority sector, and other we call it as commercial sector. In case of priority sector, there is a criteria. Criteria is 40% of ANBC, adjusted net bank credit, should be lended in the priority sector. For banks like we have public sector banks, we have foreign banks, we have private banks. This is 75% of ANBC. In case of RRBs, as well as in case of small finance bank. If you remember, recently priority sector lending updates were given. RBI has come up with the detailed master direction where RBI said that it should be 60%. It should be 60% for urban cooperative banks. Do you remember? Priority sector lending, which was earlier projected to be 75%, तो आरबीआई ने कहा ना यार ये 75% नहीं हो पाएगा, let's fix it to 60%. याद आया? Do you remember this story? ठीक. अब इस स्टोरी में एक और ट्विस्ट था. What was the twist? The twist is priority sector limits. There is a criteria overall ANBC, and there are certain limits. For example, in case of agriculture sector, it is 18% of ANBC. In case of weaker section, in case of MSME, and so on. In that particular case, if a bank do not fulfill the priority sector lending limits, then what will happen? Then the shortfall will be transferred to different accounts. If a bank is not if bank has not fulfilled the priority sector lending limits in case of agriculture sector, then it will be transferred to RFID, Rural Infrastructure Development Fund. Rural Infrastructure Development Fund. This account is maintained with NABARD. Then NHB. In case of NHB, it is Urban Infrastructure Development Fund, NHB, or the surplus for the shortfall will be transferred to Micro Small Enterprise Refinance Fund, Micro Small Enterprise Refinance Fund, which is managed by SEBI. And even we have Mudra. So this shortfall will be transferred to NABARD, NHB, SEBI or Mudra. This we have studied. There is nothing wrong in that. There is nothing wrong in that. But there is a certain condition which we need to remember over here. What is that condition we need to remember? So the condition which I am talking about, or due to which this point is important, that point is exposure. What is exposure? If I talk about a bank, or if I talk about a financial institute, if I take an example of a financial institute, so this financial institute, or let's say a lending institute, this lending institute is lending funds to an entity E. So the amount which is lended by this lending institute, lended by this lending institute to this entity will be termed as exposure. Will be termed as what? Exposure. What is this exposure all about? Sir, exposure का मतलब है यहाँ पे exposed. You are exposed to what? Sir, you are exposed to credit risk. You are exposed to credit risk. Maybe you have made an investment in this entity. आपने शेयर खरीदे इस particular entity के. You have made an investment in an entity. Then again, you are exposed because you are exposed to market risk. Again, that will be the part of exposure. तो इन सारे terms को ध्यान में रखते हुए, इन सारे criterias को ध्यान में रखते हुए, RBI has come up with a term. What RBI has said that if we are talking about urban cooperative bank, and if that urban cooperative bank is providing loan or investing funds to a particular entity, then this exposure should be up to 15% of tier 1 capital. Should be 15% of tier 1 capital. What? So should be 15% of tier 1 capital. This is the first thing. And if I include the group means the subsidiaries. If I include the subsidiaries of this entity, for example, entity A, entity B, entity C, and this is entity A. So for entity A, exposure limit is 15%, but if I include the group, then in case of the entire group, this exposure should be up to 25% of tier 1 capital. तो exposure का मतलब समझ आया? Exposure का मतलब आपके funds जो आपने invest किए, loan पे दिए, which are exposed to risk because of involvement of the second party. Now, if you have invested, it would be market risk. If you have lended, it would be credit risk. So that is basically the exposure or the value of risk which urban cooperative bank is going to witness due to a single party or group of parties. ठीक है जी, यहां तो कोई दिक्कत, ये एक्सपोजर वाला पार्ट समझ आया? Is this point clear? Give me yes sir. Is this point clear? Give me yes, sir. What is this exposure? ये clear हुआ ना? So exposure is whatever value is given by loan or may be invested, that all will fall under the category of exposure. क्योंकि अगर आपने लोन दिया क्रेडिट रिस्क है, अगर आपने इन्वेस्ट किया तो मार्केट रिस्क है, अगर आपने डिपॉजिट किया तो उस केस में भी रिस्क है, डिपॉजिट केस में भी रिस्क है. क्यों? क्योंकि अगर आपने डिपॉजिट दिया और या डिपॉजिट किया इन दिस एंटिटी और अगर ये एंटिटी कल को डूब गई, मर गई, तो भी आपके फंड्स पे रिस्क तो है. सो दैट इज द एंटायर एक्सपोजर, दैट इज द एंटायर एक्सपोजर. ठीक है. अब यहां पर एक पॉइंट है जो मैं आपके साथ इंट्रोड्यूस करूंगा, विच इज रियली वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. व्हाट डज दैट पॉइंट सेज? मान लेते हैं कि ये अर्बन कोऑपरेटिव बैंक है. ठीक है, मान लेते हैं ये अर्बन कोऑपरेटिव बैंक है. दिस अर्बन कोऑपरेटिव बैंक हैज already invested or may be lended or may be deposited funds in NABARD. तो अर्बन कोऑपरेटिव बैंक ने अपना कुछ पैसा इन्वेस्ट किया, लेंड किया, डिपॉजिट किया, किसमें? नाबार्ड में. तो इसका मतलब अर्बन कोऑपरेटिव बैंक इज exposed to n number of risk, due to NABARD. और हम जानते हैं क्या? हम जानते हैं कि सिंगल एंटिटी के लिए ये जो एक्सपोजर है, फॉर सिंगल एंटिटी दिस एक्सपोजर शुड बी अप टू 15% of tier 1 capital, and if I include the subsidiaries of NABARD, then in that particular case this exposure can be up to 25% of tier 1 capital. ठीक है जी, कोई दिक्कत? अब हुआ ये कि सर ये जो अर्बन कोऑपरेटिव बैंक है, दिस अर्बन कोऑपरेटिव बैंक इज ऑन इट्स मैक्स. दैट मीन्स इट हैज funded, invested, deposited up to 15% of tier 1 capital in NABARD, and now Urban Cooperative Bank witnessed a shortfall. Shortfall in what? So shortfall in public sector lending, and that too in agriculture lending. तो अगर ये shortfall होगी, what will be done with this shortfall amount? So this shortfall amount will be invested or will be deposited in RIDF, and RIDF is the fund which is maintained by NABARD. तो अब यहां पर RBI ने क्या कहा? RBI ने कहा the shortfall of priority sector lending will be transferred to RIDF of NABARD, but on this RIDF of NABARD transfer amount, this shortfall amount, it won't be included under, not included as exposure. It will not be included as exposure limit. तो आपकी जो exposure limit है वो 15% है या 25% है without exposure on the shortfall amount which has been transferred due to the priority sector lending target unfulfillment. समझ आई ये बात? So this shortfall which is transferred to NABARD, undoubtedly Urban Cooperative Bank will be exposed. It will be witnessing a risk. It will be an exposure, but that exposure, that risk will not be included as a part of exposure limit. It will not be included as a part of exposure limit. समझ आ गई बात? Is this point clear? If it is clear, just give me yes. बस इतनी ही कहानी है, इससे ज्यादा कुछ नहीं है. लेकिन अगर ये मैं ऐसे ना समझाता तो आपको कभी समझ नहीं आता. तो ये हैं वो 3 अकाउंट्स which I was talking about: Rural Infrastructure Development Fund, Urban Infrastructure Development Fund, and we have SIDB, that is Micro Small Enterprises Reference Fund, जहां पर non-achievement of priority sector shortfalls are transferred. ठीक? In this particular case, this was the notice, and this notice says primary cooperative banks. This is valid only on the primary cooperative banks, but not on the salary earning banks or salary earners bank, जो मैंने अभी आपको बताया क्या होता है. There is an exemption from exposure norms. What exposure norms? ये है point जो आपको ध्यान में रखना. Out of all these two, you have to remember this point only first. You have to remember this point only first. तो अगर आपको यही पॉइंट याद रखना है तो मैं यहाँ पे थोड़ा सा एडिटिंग कर देता हूँ, so that it can help you while reading the content. So we are concerned about this particular term which says that prudential exposure limit is urban cooperative bank for single borrower or party. For single borrower or party, जिस पार्टी को आपने लोन दिया, जिस पार्टी को आपने डिपॉजिट दिया, and a group of connected borrower or parties shall be 15% and 25% respectively. तो जो पैसा आपने नाबार्ड में डिपॉजिट किया आपने शॉर्टफॉल को, वो एक तरह से क्या है? So that is a kind of loan which you have given to NABARD. So if you have given this loan to NABARD, that means lending is done. So this lending is a part of what? So it is a part of exposure. If it is a part of exposure, तो वो shortfall को exposure में count करेंगे, but it will not be counted, or it will be termed as exposure, but it won't be counted for this limit value. It won't be included under the exposure limit value. तो क्या कहा गया? It has been said this. On a review, it has been decided that the contribution by the urban cooperative banks towards eligible funds with NABARD, NHB, SIDB, Mudra or any other entity specified by RBI on account of shortfall in priority sector lending shall not be included while computing the aggregate exposure of urban cooperative banks to such counterparties to decide party or single borrower or single party limit or group of party limits. Is this point clear? Is this point clear? तो भैया उसमें इंक्लूड नहीं करेंगे. लेकिन अगला पॉइंट ये है कि अर्बन कोऑपरेटिव बैंक का जो फंड विच इज शॉर्टफॉल, किसका शॉर्टफॉल? प्रायोरिटी सेक्टर लेंडिंग का शॉर्टफॉल. दिस शॉर्टफॉल अमाउंट इज ट्रांसफर्ड टू नाबार्ड or maybe transferred to SIDB or maybe transferred to NHB. So whatsoever is transferred to SIDB, whatsoever is transferred to NHB, whatsoever is transferred to NABARD, against these shortfall fund transfer, urban cooperative bank will maintain reserves, and these deposits, the shortfall transfer, or I will write in this manner: shortfall, priority sector lending shortfall, priority sector lending shortfall contributed to NABARD or other organizations will be treated as 100% risk, will be treated as 100% risk weight. So 100% risk weight means you have deposited the fund with NABARD or you have lended the fund with NABARD, whatsoever is the case, this is your asset दिस शॉर्टफॉल अमाउंट जो आपने नाबार्ड को दे दी, ये असल में अर्बन कोऑपरेटिव बैंक के लिए क्या है? सो फॉर अर्बन कोऑपरेटिव बैंक इट इज द असेट, it is the asset of urban cooperative bank and on this asset urban cooperative bank is going to maintain a risk weight of 100%. तो जब आप capital to risk weighted asset ratio calculate करेंगे, in that calculation this asset will be included as 100% risk weight. This will be included as 100% risk weight for capital adequacy purposes. Is it clear? Is it clear? If it is clear, just give me yes sir. उठा के देख लेना, YouTube पे 50 जगह जाके घूम लेना, इतनी डिटेल में, इतने ढंग से इस टर्म को नहीं समझाया गया. Go and check it, not once, at least thrice. Last but not the least is again a really very important information which I would like to discuss over here. वो सुनिएगा क्या? उसमें एक इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट है. वो क्या? जो मैंने अभी आपको दिखाई थी पूरी की पूरी स्क्रीन, उसमें पहले क्या कंडीशन थी? पहले कंडीशन थी कि सर जो पर पार्टी एक्सपोजर था ना, दैट शुड बी 15% and group of parties exposure should be 40% of total capital funds. फिर इसे total capital fund से रिवाइज करके tier 1 capital पर लाया गया. और उसके साथ साथ there is one more term which says urban cooperative bank के ऊपर एक condition है. The condition says that urban cooperative bank shall have at least 50% of their loan or advances in the category of small value loan. तो याद रखना, urban cooperative bank should provide 50% of total loans, 50% of total loans in the category of what? Sir, in the category of small value loan. पहले जो small value loan था ना, उसकी वैल्यू थी 25 lakhs, उसकी वैल्यू थी 25 lakhs or 0.2% of tier 1 capital, whichever is higher, subject to a maximum of 1 crore rupees per borrower. अब इसको रिवाइज कर दिया गया. This has been revised, और इसे रिवाइज करके क्या किया गया? So this revision has been done, the amendment has been done, and if I talk about this particular amendment, पहले तो minimum small value which was 40%, it has been now increased to 50%. तो 40 से 50% का इंक्रीज किया गया. और दूसरा जो रिवीजन किया गया, दैट इज द रिवाइज डेफिनेशन ऑफ स्मॉल लोन एज अ लोन वैल्यू नॉट मोर देन 25 lakhs or 0.4% of tier 1 capital, whichever is higher, subject to a ceiling of per borrower up to 3 crore rupees. तो ये कुछ नए चेंजेस है. डू रिमेंबर दैट स्मॉल लोन 50% of the total loan should be given in the category of small loan. और small loan की अब definition जो पहले 25 lakh and 0.2% of tier 1 थी, whichever is higher, now it is 0.4% of tier 1. और per borrower जो ceiling पहले 1 crore थी, this has now been increased to 3 crore rupees. This is the latest revision which has been done. ठीक है जी, क्लियर हो गया पॉइंट, समझ आ गया. दिस इज ऑल अबाउट. तो अर्बन कोऑपरेटिव बैंक के ऊपर न्यूज थी, तो मैंने उसे हॉलिस्टिक वे में कवर कर लिया. एक बार आप पढ़ लेना. The moment you will revise it, everything will be clear to you. Thank you so much for joining, guys. We'll catch you soon. पता नहीं आप लोग क्यों डरते हैं फाइनेंस से. फाइनेंस is something which is time consuming, undoubtedly, but it is very important. अगर आपने RBI के मास्टर डायरेक्शंस को, सर्कुलर्स को, नोटिफिकेशंस को बहुत अच्छे से डिकोड करना अभी से सीख लिया, trust me, the moment you join RBI, it will be a very easy, or it will be very easy to survive and grow in that organization, because as a grade B manager, understanding and the analysis of these notifications is a very important aspect in your job profile. So that is the reason I generally try my level best कि आपको ये जो circulars है इतने डिटेल में पढ़ाऊं, इतने शिद्दत से पढ़ाऊं कि ताकि जब आप इन्हें खुद पढ़ेंगे इन नियर फ्यूचर, वंस यू ज्वाइन RBI, you will be in a position to decode them for sure. Thank you so much. After half an hour, you will find the PDF on the Telegram channel. Thank you so much. Good luck. God bless you all. Don't forget to like the session and do share the feedback in the comment section. कैसा लगा क्लास? और जब मैं PDF दूंगा, उस PDF में on the basis of these news, you will find few questions. उन questions के answer comment section में जरूर देना. At least 20 students should provide me the answers in the comment section. Then only I'll start sharing the answers in my session, and then only I'll continue the practice of sharing these questions on regular basis. Thank you so much. Good luck. See you soon.